Well, I started pretty much in 1998. I mean, it's a pretty interesting story. I had a friend that's because I was writing. First, I was a writer,
Okay.
and I was writing, and I would read my work, and it's important to me, so I'd always get dressed up, and I'd have my work in some sort of a nice form to read from. And someone said, you should take Arturo Sandoval's class at UK and learn how to dye silk, and then you could make books and cover your books in silk. So that's basically how I got started doing the art class. Personal narrative, sort of in a poetic form. I'm short, so you could, read them / perform them somewhere. So I did I got into the class and started doing the assignments, and I had a son who had a paralyzing accident like 2 weeks later, which he's very independent now, and he's really grown through that. But in that moment, I had to make a decision, and I was thinking, well, I'm going to have to quit. And it was like, well, no, wait, this isn't going away. He's going to have to deal with his life, and I'm going to have to deal with mine. So I stayed in school. And the reason that's important is because it taught me to focus. And so while Arturo was teaching many different processes, I chose to focus on just one, and that was the shibori. So I did the other assignments, but I focused on the shibori because it was more tight and contained, and I knew that it was something I could do at home in my kitchen if I wanted to. And then the other thing is we had an assignment where we had to make a piece that had 72 colors in it, all the colors on the color wheel that he had given us to work from. And so I learned all about color theory and the color wheel, but I also learned the importance of focusing on a palette, one particular palette of the shades or the tones or the tints or the bright colors. So I made a decision there just to focus on the shades. And so I learned how well the colors would mix when you did that. So that was important for me because I was able to hone in and focus. And then that's how I started making the wearable art. Then that I could wear when I did my poetry readings and make my books and read from my book. Wearable art is, it's always it's always an accessory. It's a way to make a statement. I'm kind of calling it a power tool. You might pay attention to colors a little bit, but because I work so much with the color theory and the color wheel, I just proceed around the color wheel and mix my colors that way. So they always come out beautiful. And art is responding, so it's constantly asking what if, and then doing something, and then responding to it. And then you get bored, and so you want to, again, you ask what if, so that's how a lot of things come up. These are made from the remnants or the leftovers after I serge. So after I serged this piece, there was a little strip of silk that fell off. Serge is a technique of finishing this edge here with the stick. Okay. But when you did that, then you had leftovers. Right. And so these are those leftovers. You can see they're really thin right there. So then that's how I figured out how I can use those leftovers. And I figured if they're beautiful and they're art, I formulated the color already, and it turned out beautiful on one piece, and so why wouldn't the remnants turn out beautifully? And so they're very different that way. And these pieces over here, the pieced pieces, that's what this one is on here. That started because I would dye a piece of fabric, and then there would be a flaw in it, and I didn't like it. So I said, what if I tear these up and finish the edges and then sew them back together again? And because I would stay in one palette of colors, then they would all go together. I wouldn't go and mix several different palettes. But that's how that invention or design came about. There's a couple of companies in California, Dharma Trading and Exotic Silks. There's other companies around, but I've pretty much just stuck with these two and get my fabrics there. I order my dyes there. And, I use a vinyl sulfan dye, which means I have to steam set it, and they're liquid dyes. And I like the liquid because when I first do the dye, there's powder dyes, but they say right on there to wear a mask. And I knew I was going to do a lot of dyeing, and I just couldn't see myself wearing a mask, so I decided to stay with the liquid dyes. And I also like them because I really only have 4 bottles of dye. I have yellow, magenta, and turquoise, and out of those 3 colors, I mix all of my colors. And then I have black, which is a shade, which is in this. Both of these pieces have black in them, and that's how you get a little bit deeper color. But I like that because I can mix all my colors. I know what's in the colors. I know how they're going to bleed together when I overlap them, and I don't have to stock a big inventory. I love the Kentucky Arts Council. I think it makes a big difference in the state, and I've been involved with it for as long as I've been doing this. And the reason I have so much inventory is, for one thing, when I was studying at UK, Marilyn Hammond, she made the statement once, "You are prolific. Paint it, draw it, give it away, sell it, share it. You can always make more." And the other thing that happened then was the Arts Council did a workshop down in Somerset one time. I went to that, and they bring in this guy from a factory. And I was like, a factory? I am not a factory. But nonetheless, I paid attention, and he gave me the very, very best piece of advice. And he said to work to fill stations, not to finish a project. So I always have a pile of silk that's been scoured and ready to dye. I always have poles and ropes that have been wrapped, ready to put the dye on them. I always have pieces that are drying, ready to be unwrapped and steamed. So you see, I have all these stations, so I'm always able, it's easy to work that way.